Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. I am on live here with Emma Garrison. Emma is the founder and CEO of Balance and Bliss Coaching, which is absolutely phenomenal. Here's Winston. He's checking in with us too in the background.
So
Emma's
cute.
also the host of Living in the Yum podcast. Super powerful, lots of content there. So if you guys haven't had the opportunity yet, please definitely subscribe, go over and take a look at all of the fantastic stuff that Emma's got going on there. And also Emma is a NLP master practitioner, which I think is super fascinating because I have this desire to learn as much as I can about NLP and all of the benefits and what it could possibly do for everybody here in our group. So welcome, Emma. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. This is my first Facebook Live, so I'm so excited. This is
awesome.
Amazing.
Well, thank you for, I'm so glad you're going live for the first time with us. That's exciting.
Yes, I love it. I'm excited for the interaction and any questions. I'm here for the highly interactive session. So if anybody's live with us, pop in and say hello.
Yes, awesome. And I'm going to be checking my phone. So when we do this whole live process, it doesn't show us on the computer who's actually on and who's asking questions. So when you guys see me look at my phone, that's basically all I'm doing. I'm just taking a look to see who is in the group and who's joined us. So Emma, before we get started, I would love to ask you if there is any fun fact that you would like to share with us that you normally don't share with strangers.
Oh, yes. Okay, so my go-to fun fact that I use that I share with all strangers pretty much because it's my go-to question or my go-to response is that I've been to all 7 continents, including Antarctica, which is great and fun and dandy, but that's not something that I have not shared with strangers. So to that end, and to step sort of into the coaching space and the work that Melissa and I do, I am a big believer and supporter and embodiment of authenticity and sitting in that authenticity. And so a part of that for me is sharing bits and pieces of my journey. And a big one of those, a big piece of that is I have a big block around crying. Crying is the story that I have about it is that it's so hard for me. I will sit there and be like, I'm okay, it's time to cry, let's cry. And I don't. So this is something that I'm working on right now and something that I'm moving through the motions for. I'm actually going to a 2-weekend workshop in October called Bridge with Alexi Panos and Preston Smiles. It'll be amazing. And I'm hoping to experience some breakthroughs there. So that's a piece of me that I don't normally share. That's something that I'm working towards that I think is a part of that authenticity.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. It's interesting, the whole crying, there's so much shame. We shame ourselves around crying, and we have to be strong, especially as women. We have to show up stronger than everybody else, and we always have to be on our game. And so that puts us in that spot of, am I really going to show this emotion? Do I really want to go and dive into that? So, I honor you. I'm so proud of you for taking that, step and going to Bridge. I've heard phenomenal things about Bridge, and Alexi and Preston are 2 of my absolute favorite mentors out there. So that is going to be exciting. I can't wait to hear more about that when you're done.
Yes. Yeah, they are amazing. And I think you're right that, and this is a lot of the NLP work that I do as well is kind of taking things back to a time when you were a child and understanding, okay, where did this stem from?
Right.
And so for me, just to give you a little glimpse before we get too into things, for me, the thought patterns that happen when crying comes up is, oh, take a deep breath, push it back down. We're good. You're okay. It's okay. You're okay. Who does that sound like, right? For me, mom.
Right.
That was constant when I was little. Yeah. You're okay. Okay. We're okay. Let's go. And here's the thing that I think is so amazing that we get to recognize that's a really big component of NLP is understanding the NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming, but we'll get into that, I'm sure. in NLP, we are always identifying the positive purpose and positive intention. So this is good for my people pleasers out there, right? This is, or recovering people pleasers. Like, how do we take a deeper look at mom saying, hey, it's okay. You're okay.
Right.
She's trying to help me heal quicker, faster, better, stronger. We're good. We're good. We're good. She's doing that in the best interest of her child.
Right.
I can see the positive intent there. And the best interest of the child saying it's okay, it's okay, it's okay is not always the only way to get there. And that's what NLP does, is open up our resourcefulness pathways to understand what are different ways that I can get to that same positive intention.
My dogs are going crazy. This is a benefit of being live. It's like the dogs are like,
Yes.
Hey, I want to jump in on this with you guys.
Authenticity in its finest. I can't hear them if that's any help.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And I, as a mother, I think about this often. When my kids, when they used to come to me, it was like, okay, now. You try and just move them through it instead of actually giving them the opportunity to process. And so that is, it's so impactful now, looking back. It's like, dang, if I had a do-over, like that would be one of those things. I would love to be able to go back, to when the children were so much younger and allow them to express that and to get that out and to move, the emotion, because emotion is energy in motion, right? And so it's like so important to do.
Yeah, totally. And you hit it nail on the head of like allowing the process to happen, allowing the child to have the meltdown, be sad, be angry, move through that, self-soothe. For me, I don't have children, so I have not had to experience the like crazy mind trip of what it's like to parent and what I do want to do or don't want to do. And I do have one of my best friends has kids who I consider my niece and nephew. And whenever I watch them, as I was learning NLP and going through my practitioner and then master practitioner training, I would go and sit with them and babysit. And I remember one year it was Christmas time and there was this big blow up. They had like a blow up snowman or something, and it kept deflating. We couldn't keep it inflated. And, you like plug it into the wall and it just gets bigger. And he was so sad. He was like angry about it. And all I could think to do, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with a child. So all I could think to do is like redirect. He was maybe 2 at the time. Redirect. Oh, let's play with Legos. Let's play with blocks. And I remember calling my coach after that and saying, oh God, I messed this child up. I am distracting. I'm not honoring his feelings. I'm not letting him move through the process of being upset that the snowman is not blowing up. And she was like, whoa. Like, we do not need to go down this route. And every time I think about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I'm a parent? Because I feel like I know too much now that it's ruined me for like helping somebody. But what I will say is going through all of the different personal growth and trainings and NLP specifically as well, which in my courses, we would have yoga instructors to investment bankers who are wanting to implement NLP into their business. And here's the thing. Everybody has their stuff.
Right.
So I would argue that no matter how you respond to the snowman not inflating again and having a child be upset about it, there's always going to be more to process as that child grows up and shifts into adulthood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? There's no perfect, so there's no need to pressure ourselves as parents. And that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it.
It's so funny when my kids were young, and now that my daughter's 19 and my son is going to be 17. It's so funny because we can look back at it and we can laugh, but it was like we're going out in public and so help me, like if you embarrass me in public, like we're going to have major issues at home. And so like now we just talk it, like the kids know, like there's this look, like I just have to give them the look and they're like, they know to stop. And it's so funny, like just looking back at how differently, we were parented and how people parent now.
Yeah. There's such a variety, and it's all great in their own ways, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love,
I
love,
guess you
love
live
that.
and learn.
Yes. So tell us about the podcast, Living in the Yum. How did you
Yes.
birth this project? Like, what was the creative idea and everything behind that?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had some great story about the creative idea behind it, but let me tell you. Um, so, one of the things that was important to me as I launched a business and into the coaching space and supporting other people was creating community. That's something that's been like imperative through my personal growth journey, is having other people who are looking for or craving for similar things that I am in life. And so for me, having that has been unparalleled, and I want to be sure that that's something that stands strong in what I create.
Yeah.
And so collaborations came to mind. How do we collaborate? Facebook Live felt very scary to me at the time. Instagram Live, I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that. That was the story playing in my head.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I'll do a Zoom, I'll record it, and then I'll post it later for people to watch and comment on as they so please. So I did my first Zoom collaboration that I was going to post later, and I realized the way that the video recorded, I couldn't see us side by side. I could only see one person at a time, and I thought, oh my gosh, these are my stories. This is my like ego playing so big right now. I was like, well, I can't post that. That doesn't look right. One's big, one's small. It's not in flow. I don't like it. And so I thought, well, I'll just post the audio. Went down that path, and then I realized if I'm just posting the audio, that's a podcast.
Right.
So all in the matter of like 2.5 hours, I go through this thought process and realize, oh, okay, like I can totally do this. Bought a little sound bit online, made my, this is Emma Garrison, your host of Living in the Young podcast, just kind of went with it. And it's really evolved into what I never knew I wanted or needed. And like, I love that. That's just the component of like trusting the universe and your highest good for your evolution, and just knowing it's here and it's coming and it'll be here whether you want it or not, so that's sort of the evolution of how we got to the podcast. The podcast is called, like you said, Living in the Yum, and that is one of my favorite phrases. And for me, what it means to live in the yum is to really like sit in your own centeredness, sit in your own internal knowing, having that trust in the universe and your intuition and God's spirit, whatever you relate to, and moving through life with like a congruency and an alignment to that greater vision. And for me, I call it yummy, like I feel it in my stomach.
Yeah.
For me, it happens after I leave a personal growth retreat, or sometimes if I do a really deep, long meditation, sound baths do it for me. Oh my gosh, like that. And what I've experienced is it's a great feeling and I love it. And then I get in my car from my sound bath and I'm driving home and somebody cuts me off and I'm pulled right out of it. Or a horn honks. Horn honking is like one of my biggest. I hate horn honking.
Like, oh my God. Yeah.
I know. Which doesn't work well with LA. But it pulls you out of that yummy feeling. And so my ultimate intention is to run this like lifelong experiment and gather evidence of how do we sit in that yummy feeling and hold on to it through the horn honking, through the I just dumped my coffee on the couch here at the cute coffee shop and everybody saw because that just happened. How do you sit in that confidence, inner knowing connection, even through the ups and downs in life? So the podcast, Living in the Yum, is bringing people in who have amazing perspective, coaches that I look up to, experts that I look up to, and having them share their wisdom and their yum with the listeners to help plant seeds, because we're all going to live in the yum in a different way. My living in the yum is going to be different than your living in the yum is going to be different than Susie Q's living in the yum, so my goal is to bring all of these different perspectives so people can like pick and choose. Oh, I'm going to take that and put it in my pocket. That really works for me. That not so much, I can leave it.
Yeah.
So that's my intention. I'm so excited about the podcast. We have some amazing episodes that are about to release. So I'm so excited. You know, I had some people who were like kind of stretch, you know, I don't even know them, but I look up to them and sent them messages and, oh my gosh, I love that concept. I would love to come on. So I'm so excited to bring the people who are coming in the next couple of weeks and share their yum. So
Awesome.
it's amazing.
I am so excited. I'm so excited to see who you have coming on next. I love everything about this. I love that you go, it's about community, and it's about giving people that opportunity to take that with them, throughout the day, regardless of the ups and the downs and what they're going through. And, I think it's very interesting when we talk about community and we talk about, who we surround ourselves with, and we want to surround ourselves with people who inspire us and who push us to live in the yum, and who, push us to be and to live in our, to our higher self. And so it's so powerful. And I even feel like, bringing people on here and into the group, there's such an old story that a lot of people play about, well, why are you doing that? Like, isn't she your competition? And it's not about competition. It's about, women coming together and women, supporting one another. And, I have this, together we rise, like we are going to rise together, and together when, we can move mountains if we're doing it together.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I don't know if I've just lived in this space long enough that it's not clear to me anymore, but like the competition thing never even crosses my mind, like the people who I've brought on the podcast, some of them would technically be considered direct competitors. Like they are coaches, they are looking to get their people to understand their worth and living in that authenticity. And I mean, we could be considered, competition. And it doesn't even cross my mind for that very reason. It's like, oh no, we get to live in that space of abundance,
Yeah.
And the other thing that came up for me too, that I wanted to share that I don't know if I made clear, is that, so living in the, I was thinking about this specific group, people pleasers and self-assured badasses. Love it. And I am 100% an in recovery people pleaser. I think, yes.
Yeah.
I think most people are. And what I want to be really explicitly clear about is that for me, living in the yum does not have to do with not experiencing the negative self-talk, I'm nervous because what if I bring that person on my podcast and then my followers go follow them and then they want to coach with her and not me. It's not about not experiencing those things, that self-talk, that ego talk. It's about experiencing it, recognizing it, having the awareness to say, oh, I know what that is, and that's not in alignment for me. And how do I choose to shift this to sit back in my yum?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, I couldn't even agree more. It's so interesting as a coach, and when having normal daily conversations with people, whether it's, I don't want to say competitors, but when we're out and we're at events and we're doing these things and we're talking, it's like the people who are going to resonate with me and with my message and the way that I deliver what I have to share is going to be different than the people who resonate with you and with your message and your story and your history, and we do the same thing, but yet it's so different, right? And when you are not living in fear and you're not afraid that you aren't going to be able to make it at the end of the month, there is no such thing like as competition. And so it's just being able to just embrace. And like you said, if we experience an emotion, because I get them too, it's well, crap, like that didn't really go as I had planned. And when we have those things and those stories replaying, it's really being able, like you said, to recognize that. And once we recognize that, then we have a choice. Are we going to continue down that path, or are we going to choose differently? And once you have that choice, that's where the freedom is at.
Yes, yes, yes. There's so much freedom in choice.
Right.
So in NLP, which I'm talking about a lot, and it is only one of the tools that I use, but I think it's a really important one. In NLP, we like to say that the different processes and programming and repatterning of beliefs that happen in this environment that NLP creates, that creates resourcefulness.
Yeah.
I might butcher this a little bit, but it's like one choice you're stuck, two choices is a dilemma, and three choices is a blessing, or something along those lines. I'll look it up and post it down here later. But it's this idea when we only have two choices, we feel restricted. It's
right.
This or this. And the idea behind NLP is no. Like, we get to live in this abundance. And if we're able to kind of crack away at our little belief patterns, our resourcefulness and open-mindedness, and oh my gosh, there's so much more around me that I didn't see. Or if I'm emotionally charged, I don't know about you guys, I drop right into victim mode. Like, poor me, there's nothing I can do. There is no clear solution. There's nothing for me here. And my mom will always say to me, like, I think you're a little bit unresourceful, and I just want to hit her upside the head, but she's right.
Yeah.
So NLP does just that, what you're talking about, which is allows us more choices.
Yeah.
Which gives us like a lot of yum. Because when there's choice and awareness of, do I want to subscribe to my ego telling me that this is competition versus telling me that this is abundance and we rise together, what do I want to choose? Like, obviously this is yummier, so that's where I want to go, right? So the choices are like magic sauce.
Yeah. And I think what's so powerful about that, like you said, when you have two choices, it's like, okay, well, if I choose this, does that make this one wrong? If I'm choosing just one, what if I make the wrong choice? And I think that the more options there are, and the more open you are to all of these other possibilities and all of these other avenues, it totally takes away all of that unneeded pressure that we put on ourselves.
Yes. And I love that you brought up, like, does that make this choice wrong? If this choice is right, that choice must be wrong. Right. And something that I'm working on personally that I love to share with clients and my corporate clients in the realm is that we get to gift ourselves by dropping judgment words. Like good, bad, right, wrong. To who? About what? You know what I mean? So it's like, and that sounds so... Let me preface, like, I am such a practical, logical-minded person that before I stepped into this kind of woo-woo world, is what I like to call it, I would sort of roll my eyes. Like, these people are living on clouds with rainbows and fairies dancing around, and, like, I'm not buying it.
Right.
And so I was a hard, cookie to crack coming into this space. And it took me a long time. I went to my first personal growth retreat in 2015. And like just now in the last 2 years, have I been like, oh, I think there's something to this. Oh gosh. I lost my train of thought. We were talking. So I have my hands like this. I'm like, was I talking about choices? I don't remember.
Right. So talking about choices and talking about the, well, if I'm choosing this, then that makes this one wrong. So when dropping those judgment words that we put.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's basically it. I mean, just the idea that like we are creating meaning out of right and wrong and good and bad. Mm-hmm. Like we assign that meaning in our brains. It's made up.
Right.
Yeah. There is no such thing as good and wrong, good and bad and right and wrong, other than in alignment to your higher good.
Right.
And what your soul wants and what intuition, spirit, God, Jesus, whoever is encouraging you to sit in.
Yeah. You bring up a very good point there. I feel like things happen to us every day, but it's neutral, right? Like it's our own stories, it's our own judgment, it's our own patterns, it's the way that we were raised, it's all of these other things that we give these neutral events an emotion and a meaning. So if something happens to us, well, that means that she doesn't like me. That means that, I'm not good enough. That means, and so we create we create our own misery, basically is what that comes down to, because everything's really just neutral. And how are we going to choose to handle that situation? And then how do we want to navigate that and move forward?
Totally. And by the way, most of the time, our little imaginative ego brain is going to make up something much worse than what's actually coming to fruition, or
Right.
what the other person might be experiencing.
Yeah. What is that there's this saying, like, we think they're thinking about us, right? But they could care nothing at all about us, because they're too busy, and they, whoever that person is, they're too busy thinking about themselves, because we are all thinking about ourselves and, how we're going to survive, how we're going to do things. And so it's so funny, like, being nervous to go on and do a Facebook Live, or being nervous to do an Instagram Live, we're thinking these people are thinking these things, and they don't give two shits about what we're doing, because they're thinking about themselves.
Yes, it's like, yeah. I have been really blessed with super clear skin with like no effort at all. Like quite transparently, I have, up until this past year where I'm like, oh, I might want to start thinking about like anti-aging stuff, I have been no care in the world. Like, I don't have a face wash routine. I like maybe scrub it in the shower a little, just no effort given to the face. And I've never, I'm talking never had bad skin, which is, knock on wood somewhere, because like that's a shocking blessing in itself. And so anytime I don't really get them anymore, but when I was, in college, high school, anytime I had a breakout, I'm like, oh my God, that's all people can see. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hello, sister. No one is looking at your breakout. But I like literally thought my whole face may have been a pimple, because everyone's going to be looking at me. Right. That's all they're going to see. I mean, and like, it's the same with thought processing.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Or Facebook Living or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so funny.
So we've touched a lot on the NLP, but I would love for you to give everybody in this community an idea of exactly what NLP does, and for people pleasers, and for anybody, right? Like how can this, even just the knowledge of it, like how can this benefit you? How can this help you, excel in what you're doing and take that next step and really just like move on in life?
Yes. Okay. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, is what it stands for. And essentially it's thought patternings and language that we have programmed from childhood, even down to infancy, church, family, friends, elementary school, all of these things that have created us and created who we are today. Mm-hmm. All of those experiences have left thought patterns in our brain, literally. And so neuro-linguistic programming is a way to reprogram those belief patterns. And what that looks like is taking a certain belief, or taking, sometimes you have to like dig to get to the belief, because maybe it's you and I are competition. So why am I going to go on her thing and she's going to come on my thing? Like, how does that we're competition? We can't do that. Right. Well, underneath that, there is a supporting belief that you and I are competition. Most of the time it stems down to self-worth, deservingness, good enough. Right. Those are like the three big human nature underlying beliefs that really tear us up. Because when you think about ultimate desire as a human being, it's like acceptance and love. Right. That is what every person on this planet craves.
Mhm.
I don't care who you are, what story you have. Anything
Right.
that says anything other than that, it's a bunch of like weeds and cobwebs that you get to brush away until you see that like small child inside of you or inside of that other person.
Yeah.
That the mom just went, was like, you're okay. So it's this idea that we have created. I mean, we have self-created them, which is great because that means that we can self-uncreate them.
Right.
Or repattern them being our belief systems. So NLP is a set of processes and programs that we get to use to rewire those belief patterns. So if I'm in belief that you and I are in competition and I do some, we call it meta outcome. If we're in competition, then what? Oh, I might not get as many clients. And if you don't get as many clients, then what? I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. And if you aren't able to pay your bills, then what? I'm not going to be happy and I'm going to have a lot of shame about it because I am going to be having to ask my parents for money. And if that, then what? So it goes up and up and up. And ultimately, for me, worthiness is a big one. So for me, it would be, I'm not worthy to be sitting next to Melissa as another competition coach with her.
Mhm.
And so then we get to dig in, where did that unworthiness originally come from? So in NLP, we call it first and worst, first or worst. And these are like mini traumas in our life that have created what we are now believing today.
Yeah.
So most of the beliefs that we're walking around with right now today that are ruling our entire life are from ages 12 and under.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but like, I do not trust my 12-year-old self to be making decisions for my 28-year-old self or 29. It's not, I don't want that.
Yeah. And what's so powerful about this, once you understand this and once you have the knowledge that, okay, I'm really feeling like I failed at this. And I failed at this because something that happened, when I was 9 years old. And then you're like, what the hell happened when I was 9 years old? And there's this whole process of, it could be the littlest thing. Like, it doesn't have to be, people are like, well, I had a great childhood. Like, my parents were super loving. Like, there was never any, and they, I get clients who just can't wrap their minds around that. And it's like, really, like, it could have just been that you were picked last at kickball. Like, it could have been something as simple as that, but that impacted you at 9, which then changed the way that you reacted with your peers, which then, changed the way that you dated, which then changed the way that you stood up for yourself when you applied for your first job out of college. And now you're sitting in your 30s and you're like, and it's all related back to, it really could be something that you don't even expect. And that's what's so important about, the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing. And it's get to the root, right? Get to that root cause and figure out what that child needed all of those years ago. And what you needed then is your freedom now.
Yes. I am so glad you brought this up because I am the quintessential example. And this is a story that I used to play in my head. Was I had this great childhood. I was raised very, very privileged. And, I mentioned that I traveled to all 7 continents. 6 of those happened under the age of 15. Like, I lived a picture perfect kid life. No abuse, no parent in jail, no, addiction, none of that. I was what I considered this great childhood. I have nothing to complain about. I am not deserving to be complaining when Susie down the street has this is my college roommate who is freaking phenomenal. And like, how, knowing what I know about NLP and how all of these thought patterns are created, I'm like, how did you turn out so great? She had a bipolar mother who was an alcoholic and a paranoid schizophrenic father. Her mom died by the time of like 7 or 8, maybe 9, and her dad's been on disability his whole life because he does not have the ability to work with his mental illness. And so like I would compare myself to people like my roommate in college and think I have no room to be complaining or saying this is hard or I believe blah blah. You know, I had no compassion for myself. And here's what my first coach taught me. And that is we get to have compassion and hold for those people who have had experiences that are truly what, you know, mainstream considers a trauma, which is a trauma, you know, something that is life shifting.
Right.
I did not have life shifting, from my perspective, experiences growing up. What I did have was heartbreak and friends dying and watching my parents fight and these things that are considered little in my mind. That doesn't make them any less life forming. So to give some context to this as an example, to your point of it can be little things. For me, one of the beliefs that I've worked through is my opinion doesn't matter and my voice is not heard. When I went back to my first and worst, it was sitting at the dinner table with my older brother and my 2 parents. And my brother was into politics from a little boy. Oh, hello.
This is who we were all hearing.
Hello. He's like, I just want to hang, guys. Sitting at the table, my brother could talk politics with my parents. I'm talking, we're like maybe 9 and 8. And all I cared about was my Barbie doll or my toy horse or whatever I had at the time. I don't know. And that's what I wanted to talk about. But it was blown over because my parents and my brother were having an awesome conversation that they could all participate in about politics. And I created a story right then that what I had to say was not important and that what I thought was not important. I also created beliefs from that about my intelligence level not being high. So it's like these baby, teeny, tiny experiences that we think are no big deal, they form our lives.
Right.
They create our belief systems. They create our belief patterning from a very young age.
Yeah.
And we subconsciously live into that all through our teens, all through college, some people into their 30s and 40s and 50s, some people their entire lives, until we realize, oh, that's a choice I'm making.
Yeah.
I get to choose to not subscribe to the belief that I'm not smart.
Right.
Or that I'm not worthy to share my opinion.
Yeah. That you bring up a very good point there. You know, we talk about these traumas and there's all of these childhood traumas that come back and we relive these. We relive these patterns. And so one of the big ones is verbal abuse. And when you think about verbal abuse, you're thinking, okay, well, I wasn't really, I didn't have any of that. And really, like, verbal abuse can be not being acknowledged. Verbal abuse is not being told that, I love you enough. Verbal abuse is, it not being complimented, not being told that you're beautiful. Like, all of these things is considered, a childhood trauma, and it's considered abuse. And depending on what level of trauma you've had in your life, whether it's going to be like, your roommate and how you've described all of these traumas as compared to, some of these traumas that other people experience, then we're like, well, my trauma is not as important as your trauma. Therefore, like, I don't have a right to trauma's trauma and how it affects you at your core level and how, like, the pathways in your brain are being developed. Trauma is trauma. It's the development of that, and the long-term effects are the exact same.
Yeah, and I love resharing that that trauma is trauma, because for me, that was a really big hurdle in my personal growth.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of years to figure out, hey, it's okay that you acknowledge these little experiences as really life altering moments.
Yeah.
That's okay to do.
Yeah. So we have Ryan was on here saying hello, and we're doing an amazing job. So hey Ryan, thank you for jumping on here with us. Yeah, like I love it. So how can my listeners get a hold of you?
Oh, yes. Okay, so Living in the podcast is available on my website, which is balanceandblisscoaching.com/podcast. It's also on iTunes and Spotify. For social, you can find me at balance_and_bliss_coaching. You can also just type in Balance and Bliss Coaching or Emma Garrison, Garrison, and you will find me on Instagram as well as Facebook. I'm in this group now, so you can just search Emma in there and I'll pop right up and you can add me as a friend. I'd love to connect and yeah.
Awesome. And I'll definitely we'll go in and we'll put everything in there so people can just click and make it super easy. So I would love to know, what are you most excited about right now? What projects are you working on? What is the juicy?
Yes. So right now, I shared with you guys, I love the community aspect. So right now I am developing 2 group programs. One is specific to NLP. So getting to experience different NLP processes, learning how you can do an NLP process. I think it's really funny when people say, I'm going to do NLP on you. I'm like, that's not how it works, but that's okay. Yeah. I have a friend who's always like, can you do some NLP on me? Because I just am really, and I'm like, no, but you can do some NLP on you. So we talk about, in the NLP group, we talk about what NLP is, how I can use it, how it serves me in life. And the most amazing thing about that is we can use NLP processes on ourselves. So there's a lot of times I have this notebook that's just filled with little things that I jot down, and I meta outcome for myself of, okay, what does that mean? And if that means that, what does that mean? And what am I making that mean? And I can go through these processes independently, which helps me clear a lot of blocking that happens day to day, all the time. This is an ever changing world, that including our thought patterns. So we get to always be in development mode.
Yeah.
It's never going to end. Plot twist. So I have the NLP group, and then I have the Living in the Yum group, which is going to be a container of no more than 12 women. It is specific to women. NLP is not. And Living in the Yum, we go through all of the different components of my experience of what creates living in the yum. Things like living into your authenticity, knocking the people pleasing. How do I really deeply believe in my self-worth? We talk about committing to ourselves. So I don't know about you guys. I, for a long time, would say, I'm going to wake up and go to the gym in the morning. Yeah. And then the morning comes and I'm like, oh, there's my alarm. I don't think I'm going to go to the gym. That is not for my highest good. Not because I'm not going to the gym, but because I'm not upholding a commitment to myself. Right. So yeah, there's a lot in that program as well. We do a lot of inner child work. How do I self-soothe? How do I share with my inner child what she may have needed to hear that she didn't get to hear growing up? And how do I get to take radical responsibility about that? So those are the 2 things that I'm most excited for. I'm also taking on 2 one-on-one clients right now, capping that as well at 2 for right now, so I can spend the time and energy and effort in the NLP group and the Living in the Yum group. So if this is something you're interested in, feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook, a message. Those are the best ways to get in contact with me about either of those opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think, definitely if anybody in the group is interested, please reach out to Emma. There's so much wealth of information and knowledge within her and all of her experiences. And there you
Oh, thanks, buddy.
the benefits of Facebook Live. So but yeah, like I would just, want to thank you for showing up and for being here with us and giving us this time and sharing with us. It's,
Yes.
I'm so grateful for you to come.
Me too. This has been yummy. I love having conversation with you. It's always so much fun. I feel like we speak the same language, so it's just like it's the best. And like Melissa said, if you haven't checked out her episode, she was on Living in the Yum podcast. The podcast is titled Living in the Yum with People Pleasers, and we go deep into the people pleaser stuff. And so I'm sure it will be yummy for you guys to listen to if this is the the setup we've got. So I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been so much fun, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
My computer, I think, is frozen.
Uh-oh.
So we are still live.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, guys.